Hello everyone, it's Ryan, back again with another video, and today we're going to be doing some more moving out content, and today it's going to be a collaboration between the three smoothers, all three of us coming together for this one video. All three smoothers are really talented moving out speedrunners. For those of you that don't know or haven't seen some of our previous content, all three of us have held the moving out world records on Holly's Home. A few of us have held any percent records at a point, a lot of us have had ILs across the board, across the 30 levels, so we are very well versed in the overall game. Since those three smoothers have a lot of free time on our hands and we just thoroughly enjoy talking about moving out with each other, we found ourselves one night coming together and making a spreadsheet deciding ultimately what the rankings of the 30 levels based off of speedrunning them might look like. So this video is the definitive list of 3 of the top moving out speedrunners and their opinions on what makes the best speedrunning levels and why we ranked them as we did. One disclaimer on the overall rankings: so as we are 3 distinct speedrunners and have drastically different opinions about certain levels in the game, ultimately we just decided to average our rankings on the 30 levels, ordering them 1 through 30, so some players have some favorite levels that the other 2 people do not entirely agree with, but unfortunately with this ranking system, one person can really have an influence on the overall ranking. So with that being said, if 2 people both decided that a level was in the bottom 5 and the other person for whatever reason believed it to be top 5, that level is going to be in the middle of the pack more so than the bottom, even though 2 out of the 3 of us did not really enjoy the level. Let's get started with the ranking. For anyone that's had the chance of speedrunning moving out, you might have an expectation on what might be number 30 on our list, and it's going to come to a surprise, but it's not going to be Flamethrower Factory. That is actually quite a bit higher due to one of the runners thoroughly enjoying the level. However, with that being said, number 30 on our list is Revolution Station. This sort of begins the trend of most of the 3 of us not thoroughly enjoying speedrunning the last 10 levels, and it's not entirely clear whether or not this is because the levels don't suit themselves well to speedrunning as some of the initial simpler levels do, or if it's just because due to them being in the back 10, we haven't really had a chance to optimize and fully run them. Revolution Station is in a pretty peculiar spot in that it falls pretty late into the game, but overall it is a pretty simple level when it comes to speedrunning, as the only key difference from this level to any other level is you're waiting for these rotating walls to line up into a position to make the larger items easy to transport. I will say, overall, I'm a little surprised that it ranks 30 between the 3 of us, but I guess it's just mainly because there's nothing too interesting when it comes to routing it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just looking for the path that limits the number of time you're waiting for these walls to move, and for us speedrunners, we don't generally like waiting. Continuing with this trend, number 29 on our list is Guavatron. Overall, it makes a lot of sense that we don't fully love Guavatron after knowing that Revolution Station is 30th on our list, because Guavatron is the level that follows directly after Revolution Station and it has a lot of the same characteristics. I would say, however, the main differing factor that makes us speedrunners slightly enjoy it more is the fact that we do have some speedrun tactics for it. So whereas a casual speedrunner might be only placing 1 item at a time, dragging it all the way through, us speedrunners have kind of pushed the limits by placing 2, even 3 items in this revolving door and hope that it does not burn before we get back to it. Even with this one speedrunning tactic, I'd say overall most speedrunners don't fully enjoy this level because it is pretty jank. A lot of items have been known to get stuck in there, randomly finding itself into the fire. Some of the throws over the space pit have been known to be a little difficult, so overall kind of a difficult level to speedrun, and we know how to optimize it. It's just kind of hard to get to that point right now. Number 28 on our list is going to be Lenny's Mansion. So this is one of those levels that the smoothers are kind of disagreeing on. Some of us believe that this level is not the greatest, while some of us believe it should be in the top 10. So it averages out to this kind of low point because it's 2 against 1. But with that being said, the rest of the rankings are kind of split in this way that a few of us really enjoy the levels, one of us might not, vice versa. So we're going to kind of go into the good and the bad of each level from this point forward. For Lenny's Mansion, the clear benefit from a speedrunner's perspective that I would say a lot of us really do enjoy is the pure size of the map and the amount of pathing you can do to really change the route. Because when Lenny's Mansion was first getting speedrun, the route for it wasn't fully optimized, and route changes are the #1 way to really shed that time rather than optimizing the route itself. So Lenny's Mansion really provides for a lot of diversity in routing. However, even though we're saying that one of the largest positives of this level is the sheer size of it, it is also one of its greatest detriments. When it comes to speedrunning, especially for individual levels, Most of us prefer the shorter levels because you can push them to their absolute limit. Lenny's Mansion is huge in scale. From the first step of having to throw all these items perfectly through a window and then juggling on them all the way back to the truck, into hoping to get a great piano flip and fellow boxes, into finally putting all the final items into the truck and hoping none of them fall out to mess up your perfect run. There's a lot of areas that could go wrong and none of them are that easy. The sheer size of it makes it very difficult and we're not really sure how far we have to optimize the level. The routing has really pushed it down, but from there, we haven't really optimized the actual routing. In the sense that the box throws aren't perfect, the piano flip isn't perfect, placing things into the truck isn't perfect, and no one's really too keen to really push that to its limit. The next 3 levels find themselves in a 3-way tie for 25th place, so in no particular order, number 25 first is Packrat Planet. Packrat Planet, keeping with the trend of the space levels placing very low on our list overall, it does vary slightly on the fact that it is not a cycle-based level unlike Guavatron and Revolution Station. So the one thing I would say a lot of us movers don't really love about the level is the center area that's rotating around. There really isn't much to do with it, and as a speedrunner, you kind of just want to avoid it as much as possible. With that being said, what does keep it outside of our bottom 3 is just the general feel of being able to get some of these cycles on these side platforms a little bit faster. There is something a little rewarding about getting 2 or 3 items across it before it goes all the way back around. In the future, this is a level that us movers and general moving out speedrunners could see really rising up the list due to its versatile kind of platform placement and general routing. But for the time being, since none one is really optimizing these space levels, it's going to place fairly low on our list at 25. Our second 25th placing level is going to be Stairway to Melon. Stairway to Melon is in the other massive group of levels that generally the movers don't love, which is kind of like these lava levels right before the space levels that also happen to be in the back 10. To kind of start off with the obvious negative that's kind of keeping it down at 25th place is once again these cycles. So it's a reoccurring theme that speedrunners just do not love cycles, and this is one of those levels where the whole level is on a cycle, so constantly you are battling with trying to get your items across these stairs that are going up and down, and whether or not your items are going to get stuck or happen to die when you just barely missed a throw. The main positive of this level that's keeping it from the bottom 3 once again is just the general feel of being able to get some of these throws across the stairs. I know personally when you're making a throw right as the stairs are about to go down, if you get that throw perfectly right outside the truck, it feels so great to know, especially when you're coming up to clean up the back half of the level. Our third and final level at this 25th placement is Dread Manor. So Dread Manor is actually quite a bit different than a lot of these other levels down here at the bottom, and the number one reason for it being down here is RNG, which is not a phrase that you're going to hear very often loved in speedrunning communities. For those of you that aren't in the know, RNG is basically the random factor or random number generator that is in certain game aspects, and in moving out there aren't a ton of levels that actually have this influencing possible world record times, but Dread Manor is one of those levels. The chairs that you have to throw to get towards the truck, actually in a world record run, would ideally just run into the truck and get stuck on something. Realistically, that's not too possible. However, it is well known that there are ways to corral these chairs so they're not constantly leaving, but in a world record run, you can't really waste the time to corral them, so you just have to hope you luck out. With luck being a real big factor in obtaining a world record for this individual level run, it is really hard to consider it one of the better levels to run. However, the rest of the actual level is actually fairly enjoyable to run, with a lot of the larger objects feeling really good to move out these doors, and some of the last level objects with these helmets, throwing them out the window and getting them past the ghosts, feeling great to put into the truck. Once again, with another tie, we have 2 levels coming in at 23rd place. However, unlike last time, where I randomly placed these in an order, this time I am going to list one of them first. Unfortunately, I can't put it at 24th. It was a tie for 23rd based on the average. But as a speedrunner, a respected speedrunner in the moving out community, I'm going to have to put Flamethrower Factory at the lower of the 223rds. For anyone that's had the chance to speedrun the entire any percent game or any of the individual levels, I wouldn't be surprised if you're skipping Flamethrower Factory on your second playthrough. I mean, it's a fine level for a casual player. From a speedrunner perspective, it has an upper limit, and that's just the unfortunate thing about the level. Okay, jokes aside about how much us speedrunners hate Flamethrower Factory and how we avoid it at all costs, it's actually not that bad of a level. And Sleepyhead, one of the 3 smoothers, really does love this level, and I imagine it's because we do kind of know the limit of the level. I mean, these boxes that are coming out on this conveyor belt, theoretically, if you grab the last one and every other object's already in the truck, you are going to get the best time. So there is a upper limit that we're working towards, which speedrunners love trying to test boundaries and push past them. So that's the good things about it. Unfortunately, the bad things is that outside of that, it is kind of just a boring level. You're kind of just waiting for this conveyor belt and trying to get as many things packed onto it as possible. The second of the two 23rd placement levels is going to be Roundabout Mansion. So for the absolute good of this level, I mean, it's just an interesting layout more than anything. I mean, the placement of the ghosts is, you know, not a cycle necessarily because you can't avoid them, but not absolutely the best because there is some jankiness when it comes to ghost interactions with the player. Outside of that, some of the good things are that you gotta make some cool jumps, especially down here in the bottom left. Beyond this, the only other really big thing keeping outside the bottom is that it's really just not a bad level. There is nothing too annoying about it. None of the items are overly frustrating, so that's some good about it. And the only real bad thing is sometimes some of these throws at the early part level near this bottom left window, it can be a little awkward to get them over this pond. And there really is no fast way of doing it, so speedrunners are forced into doing it if they want to try to get a record. The 22nd placing level on our list is going to be Obadiah's Orchard. So Obadiah's Orchard is actually one of the few levels that all the movers fully agreed upon its placement, outside of course, Revolution Station all the way at the bottom of our list. This level from a speedrunner's perspective is absolutely great. I mean, you gotta start off the level by running over, lowering this bridge, and then from beyond that point, the absolute fastest routes are generally jumping across these turtles, which, I mean, if you haven't seen our reference video, go check that video out. But these turtles are absolutely a joy to jump across, and I mean, I feel like a superhero just jumping across them to grab the next item. A few of the other positives on this level, I mean, getting to press these buttons and just hoping that these boxes come straight out of the tree into the fastest possible pathing, and I mean, avoiding these rakes is generally a lot of fun, but there really isn't a lot to say about the negatives of this level. I mean, this is kind of the point of the rankings that most of these levels we just fully enjoy. I mean, we love the game, so we're gonna love a lot of these levels. Now, I know I just said we're going to be loving a lot of these levels that are left. Unfortunately, this is one of those levels that 2 of the 3 smoothers placed very low down on our list, but you know Sleepyhead and disagreeing with the masses, so number 21 on our list is going to be the final move. The final move is the last level in the game and sort of acts like a boss battle, so for most speedrunning games outside of moving out, you know, boss battles are generally not like the best part of the game, especially when it comes to platformers and such. You're sort of on like a limit on terms of how fast you can beat them, and no different than moving out, this final level is kind of on a cycle of sorts in the sense that it's a very linear level, so there isn't much you can do. However, for those of you that don't know, Sleepyhead kind of started as an arcade runner, and most of the arcade levels of moving out are very linear. Hey man, maybe we'll do a ranking video on those in the future, but you know Sleepyhead in liking linear levels, so the final move is right up his alley, and I can see why he'd enjoy it. But outside of that, some of the things to enjoy about it are that, like, once you get the level down, there is a lot you can do to just run it fast, and running the level fast just feels very rewarding. It is supposed to be the final and hardest level in the game, so beating it fast feels great. In our second to last tie for our entire rankings, at number 19 we have 2 levels, and starting us off at number 19 is going to be Satellite Base Alpha. One of the most absolutely appealing things about running this level is actually just the first 10 seconds of the level. So for those of you that have not had the chance to run this game, or run this level in particular, the start of the level is very fast paced. You have to make this first cycle of grabbing these 2 objects, and it is a very tight window. So you are getting a lot of resets, but it is very enjoyable for us runners. Beyond this point, the level is filled with very tight corners and making sure you get across these fire points as safely as possible. I mean, most of us runners kind of know the hitboxes on these objects and the absolute timing of it, so we are cutting corners very tight, which makes it feel very rewarding when you get a good time. One frustration keeping Satellite Base Alpha down here at placement number 19 is the center area. So when you press the button, these objects are supposed to fall in, and sometimes when you're placing too many objects in a peculiar pattern, sometimes they get stuck on each other and do not fall into the hole, costing you the entire run. The second level placing at 19 is going to be Poolside Pad. On the complete opposite side of the coin is going to be Poolside Pad, which is in the first 5 levels of the game, so quite a bit different than the last level, but it is very enjoyable for some speedrunners. Unfortunately, I am not one of them. This is actually placed very low on my list, but Gonkro is a premier speedrunner of this level, holding the world record for quite a bit of time. For the runners that are very good at this level, it makes a lot of sense why you'd enjoy it, because there are a lot of very cool tactics that you can only implement in this level and none of the other ones in the entire game. For one thing, throwing fragile objects do not break if you're hitting another object, so a main core of running this level is throwing your objects across the pool as fast as possible and making sure those fragiles don't break. Outside of this very core aspect of the level, and it kind of being the initial part of it, the second half is the very last part of the level where you're throwing all the objects after throwing them across the pool and pushing them into the truck. And this is very essential because a lot of the fragiles could break if you're not careful, but you have to be very fast at the same time because this level is a very highly contested world record. In the future, I could imagine Poolside Pad shooting up this entire list if someone, sleepyhead, can find a way to jump over the pool and make it consistent, because currently there is one of the medals is jumping across the pool, but it is not a consistent enough strat to make it viable for individual levels. Number 18 on our list is going to be Neighborhood Watch Headquarters. So for all the moving out lore fans out there, this is probably one of your favorite levels in the game because this is the first level that really starts revealing a lot of the facts on the backstory of the game. But from a speedrunner perspective, it is just another one of those very large levels. By large levels, I don't necessarily mean by time. It is not necessarily one of the longest levels in the game, but I just mean overall scale of the level. There's a lot of running around on this map. Some of the best aspects of this map for a speedrunner is the initial button where you throw one of the boxes onto it as fast as possible and run in to grab the two larger objects. The back half of the level, or the second storage room, is actually quite a bit interesting too, with the different jumps you can make and throwing objects out the window. One of the largest limiting factors, as you'll see, is just going to be that RNG again. This level has a couple chickens, which chicken RNG isn't nearly as bad as some of the other animals, but still you are hoping that they run in a direction that is suitable for you to finish the level, but they do not always cooperate. Number 17 on our list is 21 Slick Street. 21 Slick Street is one of those levels that is often forgotten when speedrunning, but I know a few people in the larger moving out community really have enjoyed speedrunning this level, especially in recent time. I think one of the most appealing aspects of running this level as a speedrunner is the general route viability, where you can kind of take whatever path you want and it's all going to get you to the same spot at the end of it. And one of the biggest factors in terms of speedrunning this level is seeing how far you can get your throws and to make sure they're not getting crushed by the cars, because as soon as one gets crushed by the car, you're gonna have to call that a reset. One note for this level is, in the past, although this level has a sheep and that is generally considered animal RNG, for whatever reason on this level, the sheep almost always would get stuck in this little oil patch in the corner. At least for me personally as a runner, I've noticed that it doesn't get stuck there nearly as much, but some of the other runners have not noticed a difference, so maybe that's just all in my head. But just to note that if they ever do fully change the animal pathing and AI, it could really change the placements of some of these levels. Number 16 on our list is going to be Pepperoni Palace. This may come to a shock to a lot of the larger moving out speedrunning community, as Pepperoni Palace is the second level in the game, and in classic fashion, a lot of the early levels are some of the favorites for the community and the most ran levels, but this is placing just outside of our top half of levels due to just kind of being an awkward level to run at points. By being awkward, I kind of mean just the overall movement within the house can be a little awkward when you're carrying objects, and throwing them out the window can be a little difficult, and there's a limiting factor for newer runners to be able to flip this initial bed out the window. It is not one of the easier flips in the game, but it is crucial if you want to get good times. Although, in classic fashion, us speedrunners love our moving out flips. For those of you that don't know how that works, I think we're going to be having a video ran by Sleepyhead soon enough on how flipping larger objects works and generally how speedrunners might use that. But this is one of those levels that it is crucial to be able to do, which most of us runners love. A lot of the rest of the level actually uses some other speedrunning strats that are used in greater fashion in some of our higher ranking levels, such as glass boosts, juggling smaller objects, and pulling larger objects out windows. Once that little turtle stops running into us, I'm sure me and Sleepy can get on board with Conqueror's placement, and you could see Pepperoni Palace shooting up on our list in the future. Number 15 on our list is going to be Guava Run. One of the primary aspects that make this level very enjoyable to run is especially the bottom half of the map, where you're running across these moving platforms and can get those nice diagonal runs that feel very satisfying if you get them. Beyond that, I mean generally just being able to throw objects and dodging this jutting out pipe and making sure you run across without getting pushed is just a fun experience all around. And for the uninformed, I know the co-op speedrunning moving out community is not nearly as large, but this level is actually one of the few levels that is drastically different depending if you're running as single player or co-op, and as a co-op map it is equally fun, requiring massive amounts of cooperation between the two runners if you want to get a good time. Number 14 on our list is Sealed Storehouse. So Sealed Storehouse is actually one of those levels that is very fun to run casually, and most people love it on their first playthrough, and from a speedrun perspective it is still very enjoyable, but there are a few factors that just make it a little frustrating at times to make it a viable IL run. Fortunately, since IL runs only take a couple minutes, it is not the worst thing in the world when you get a soft lock on the conveyor belt or something just gets the door stuck and you can't actually progress the level. On full game runs, however, this could just be the difference between a world record run and having to reset halfway through the game, which is not necessarily something you want to be seeing. Outside of these possible soft locks and just getting stuck, the level is very fun to run, and generally people have a pretty good path through it, so there really isn't much in terms of routing. It's just grabbing these objects and getting them out these doors as fast as possible, which most of us really do find enjoyable. Lucky number 13 on our rankings is going to be Contraband Cluster. By far the highest placing space level, this might come to a surprise to some of you old-time moving out speedrunners because generally we do not love the fan interactions and throwing objects, but for Sleepyhead, once again, he found something to love within this level. Not to bash on Sleepyhead, but generally the things that people don't love about this level is just how the fan interactions work with some of the objects, because constantly these objects aren't going across the areas that you'd expect them to, and sometimes they just get stuck in corners or just don't fly at all. A few of the things to love about this level though is just being able to have different paths and running them at viable world record time pace. So what I mean by this is you don't actually have to run the exact route that the world record runs, but if you want to follow it, there is still time to save, which is something we really do love in speedrunning levels, because when something is perfectly optimized and no one can beat it, what's the fun in trying to run against that? One of the most satisfying parts of running this level as a speedrunner is placing all these small objects up by this upper fan and pressing that button and watching them fly. I mean, nothing feels better than getting a personal best and just watching 5 or 6 objects fly into the truck and getting that sound of finishing a level. Number 12 on our list is going to be the Atari Office. Atari Office is actually one of those levels that is very long due to just the overall placement of the objects and the sheer number of them that you're going to be grabbing. And this is once again another level that has a ghost that isn't necessarily RNG because the path is on a set timer, but how the ghost interacts with the player once again isn't always how you'd expect it to go. The other largest factor that people just don't love about this level sometimes is the elevator and how it functions, and unfortunately as a speedrunner, even though we have cool fancy tricks to sometimes avoid these annoyances in these levels, the elevator is basically required if you want to get a world record run. For the good in the level, this is one of the highest skill intensive levels, especially with the current route that Sleepyhead is trying to popularize. It's unclear whether or not it is actually the best, as typically there's a lot of time to say on these levels even with these small route changes, but the current route that he is utilizing is very skill intensive, which for speedrunners it is a goal to work towards, but for newer runners it can be a difficult entry point. Number 11 on our list is going to be Locked Lever Lab. So Locked Lever Lab is one of those levels that just feels very rewarding to finish a good run of because of the path that we take through the level. And by this I mean it just feels satisfying to flick these switches, run through the doors before they close, and getting these larger items bent around corners as fast as possible. Outside of these factors, throwing these smaller objects straight onto the conveyor belt through these windows and flipping this table out the glass window is almost all essential to getting a good run, and as a speedrunner they all feel great to do, especially on your first attempt. Number 10 on our list, going to be a little controversial, is Snottsberry Farm. So while I made fun of some of the choices that Sleepyhead and Gonkru made in their rankings, Snottsberry Farm is definitely the level that I myself will get a lot of lashback for placing so high on the list, carrying its placement all the way up to number 10. But I myself find the RNG in this level to be great to speedrun. Unlike the other levels where the speedrun aspect might just be in 1 or 2 objects, Snottsberry Farm, the entire thing is RNG, which I know speedrunners aren't meant to love RNG, but having that one level filled with just to the brim with RNG is something that everyone can love. I mean, anyone can get the world record on this level if they're just lucky enough. Okay, that is selling it a little bit short. You do need a lot of skill to run this level, and the route overall is pretty enjoyable, so I might have carried it to number 10, but overall, I think most people can find something to love with this level. Number 9 on our list is going to be Summer Chalet. Since we're in the top 10 of the list, I'm just going to focus on the good of the levels because nearly all of these are only filled to the brim with good things, and for this one, I think everyone can agree that the most fun aspect are these snow slopes. General speedrun routing, and I would say even for casual playthroughs, is just throwing all these objects onto the 2 snow slopes and then picking them up at the end and placing them into the truck. While the most fun part of the level is just throwing these objects as, deep onto the slope as possible and from as far back, getting those nice basketball shots onto the slope. It's also pretty rewarding to get down to the end, slide down the slope yourself, and just quickly place everything into the truck. Number 8 on our list is going to be The Floor is Guava. For a first time casual playthrough of the game, The Floor is Guava is one of the most extravagant levels to really get your hands on. And by this, it's because, you get your first 2 objects into the truck, and then it just opens up to this massive playground of moving objects, spinning, stools, and you're just trying to figure out how you're going to beat this level in the time limit when you just wasted half of it on those first 2 objects. And while a speedrunner doesn't really get the awe of the expansion of the level, it is still a very fun level to run. The runner starts by trying to optimize and limit the number of cycles they're using to get across these up and down platforms, even with the center area trying to balance precariously when you have your larger object. And from there, once the level expands into the second half, you're tasked with this 2-part obstacle course of getting all these objects back into the truck. And I mean, most speedrunners find themselves, I believe, finding the upper portion a little bit more fun than the bottom, but overall, there's something here for every runner to really enjoy, even though it is one of those lava levels that generally us speedrunners don't come to love. For the final tie on our entire list, all the way up here at number 6 on our list, we're going to start off with Deserted Depot. Casual players of the game might be thinking to themselves, wow, this should really just be number 1 on the list, and for speedrunners, that could be true too. I mean, this level is very fun to run. You are just running into these towers of boxes, trying to come up with the ways to save time in each of the 3 rooms. And that is where it might not actually match up to some of these other levels in our top 5, but it still places at number 6. And just kind of to clarify, it places at number 6 due to just the satisfaction of running into these boxes, and if you get all of them pushed straight onto the conveyor belt as fast as possible, there is not a level that compares to the satisfaction that you get from getting a good time. The other level that ties it at number 6 on our list is going to be Casa de Cliff. I think this is a level that in recent time has really rised on a lot of the rankings for a lot of the moving out speedrun community, because I know initially there was a lot of lashback on how some of the objects function on this map, in particular the 2 arcade machines on top of the car. I think since the initial running of this level as an IL, I think a lot of people have figured out really how moving those arcade machines best work, especially with the car. And some of the best juggling can be found on this map since there are a lot of small objects all the way in the back. So if you want to get up there with a good personal best or even contesting the world record, you're going to have to hone in on that juggling skill, which most of us speedrunners do really love. And I would be against myself if I just didn't give a special shout out to that beach ball. I mean, I know all of us love that beach ball with our hearts. It's only fallen out of the truck for each of us on a personal best or possible world record attempt a handful of times, but that is nothing to worry about. We still love this level, and that is why it places number 6 on our list. And with that, we are all the way up to number 5 on our list. Starting our top 5 is going to be The Chase. So the Chase is one of the most unique levels in the base game for these 30 ILs, and by this I mean it is just a very interesting design, whereas all the rest of the levels typically are some sort of house or factory where you're confined in this space. The Chase is simulating you going through this train and grabbing objects and then moving on to the next room. And I know it was previously discussed, but once again, this is one of those levels that was very heavily carried by Sleepyhead because he does love his linear levels, and there's nothing more linear than a straight line. But the chase has something for everyone to enjoy. I mean, while no runner is really trying to optimize the route at this point because it is a very solid route for what it is, all the runners that are contesting to get that world record are just trying to really optimize their movement, optimize their throws, optimize their corners, which it is a very unique level in that sense that most of the other levels can still be optimized on the routing, whereas the chase, it seems to be most of the time save is in just pure skill. Number 4 on our list is going to be the Hoop House. The Hoop House holds a special place in my heart, and it is why I gave it my number 1 ranking on the list. It might not actually be my favorite level anymore, but once upon a time, you can find a clip out there of me popping off for getting the world record, finally beating 2C+, who at that point was the overall dominant factor in the moving out speedrunning community. But we shouldn't be talking about my history with the game. We're talking about why we love the level. And for me personally, starting off the level with a flip out the window, and it just feels so smooth getting it out that window with that bed, and then throwing these objects over the wall and jumping over the wall yourself. It all just feels great, and there is a little bit of juggling. This is the first level that really popularized dragging objects on top of other objects. And I mean, I think there's just a lot to enjoy here. It was the first level that really got a lot of these skills honed in that are eventually being used on a lot of these other levels. And while it's hard to say that it's an easy world record to get, it is definitely a level that you could easily start seeing a time improvement by just learning 1 or 2 new tricks. Closing in at the top spot with number 3 on our list being Packmore River. Packmore River being one of the only 2 levels with having a world record currently under 1 minute, it is very fun to really optimize that level. Running across, dodging these cars, and going across these wooden platforms and the alligators makes for a very entertaining level, and since the level's been pushed so far, you have to get these routes and these timings perfectly. I mean, even if you just miss 1 cycle, you are going to be off that world record time. And at a point, we were a little concerned that the world record might never be beaten when we saw a crazy glitch snagging the world record at a point. And unfortunately, although we can't recreate it, if we could, this level could be pushed down to absurdly low times. And with no surprise on what the top 2 levels are going to be, I don't know if this really comes as a surprise to anyone that actually speedruns the game or plays it casually, but number 2 on our list is going to be Holly's Home. I believe we have talked quite a bit about Holly's Home in our world record progression video. If you have not managed to catch that video, I highly recommend it as it is a great introduction to the moving out speedrunning community. But a little summary on what makes the level so great is the routing that the community has done to really push this level from a minute 30 down past under a minute 30 where we thought the level might be limited, and now people are possibly getting it all the way down to under a minute. It would be the 3rd level in the base game to be pushed under a minute, and it would be an amazing feat to do. I mean, this level has it all from juggling objects, throwing objects slightly further, jumping to get the little bit of extra boost, getting glass boosts. I mean, the pathing on it has been pushed to its absolute limit, and it's just a question of execution at this point. And some of the best runners have competed to get that world record, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. I mean, unless this game dies, people are going to constantly be pushing for that Holly's Home, because it is the first level and most ran level in the game. For all you moving out OGs, for anyone that's managed to catch a moving out speedrunning stream, for any of you that have even just, looked at the game, you've probably heard rumors about what number 1 is, and this does not come as a surprise from our placement, but number 1 on our list is going to be Jerry's Apartment. Jerry's Apartment is a speedrunner's paradise. I mean, it is objectively the shortest level in the game. People have pushed this level to absurd times. I mean, before getting a sub 1 minute time was the absolute dream. People imagined, slobbering at the idea of getting under a minute. And now, in the future, could people possibly push under 35 seconds? It is a possibility. This level is just extremely fast paced. I mean, 1 mistake and you're resetting, and the whole level starts off with you just jumping up the window, which initially might not even be the intended path. I mean, if you're running up the stairs, your possibility of getting a sub 1 minute time is gone, and from there, you have these beautiful throws of fragile objects straight into the truck so they don't break. You have sending this TV out the window in 1 fell swoop instead of having to do a flip for it. You have flipping the bed as far as possible to get it ever so much closer to the final truck, and in hopes of placing some objects in a way that you can push the larger objects and get the small objects in at the same time. I mean, this level has it absolutely all. Running Jerry's Apartment was an absolute meme. People will spend hours at a time trying to push this level down, and it is no surprise that it is our number 1, the absolute best level for speedrunning and moving out. If you have not had the chance to run this level or play the game, I recommend getting to this number 5 level, the 5th level of the game, our absolute favorite, and running it until you get a sub 1 minute time. Make that your goal, make that your dream, get it done, and you'll feel great while doing it. And with that, that is going to be our top 30 list of ranking all the base game levels in Moving Out. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed our ranking, if you enjoyed our Moving Out content, comment down below. You know, we have some ideas in the works. We have that Schmoovers, you know, training video series ran by Sleepyhead where he's teaching you guys some speedrunning tricks. If you want more ranking videos in the future, us Schmoovers can get together, you know, possibly ranking the arcade levels, the VHS levels, the DLC. If there's any future DLC, any future Moving Out games, we'd also love to do a ranking on those. But, you know, comment down below, even if you just want maybe a new world record progression video. I believe Jerry's apartment might be in the future, as once again, that is our favorite level and a highly contested level. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and hope to see you guys again soon. Peace.